All right, Rabbi, say good morning. Let us continue. So we started yesterday in Os Samech Beis in Tzidkas Hatzaddik. So if you remember again, the Rebbe was teaching us about this concept that there are certain malos, there are certain, we'll call it qualities or behaviors that were unique in that they were associated with certain individuals, or certain individuals acquired these particular midos or character traits. They then became the purview of the tzaddikim, and then afterwards, ultimately, became accessible to all people in different ways. So we started yesterday with the midah of Yisrael. The first person to acquire the midah of Yisrael was Yaakov Avinu. And that midah ultimately is the actualization of internal Kiddusha. That every single person possesses an incredibly deep reservoir of Kiddusha, an incredibly deep pool of holiness, and the ability to access that, and the ability to find that, and the ability to really implement that was unique. That was Yaakov Avinu was the first person who was able to accomplish that particular initiative, he was the first person to be able to tap in to his inner Yisrael. So we're picking up on page Kuf Mentes. On page Kuf Mentes, the left-hand side by the brackets. So the Rebbe writes, "Va'omnam ma'alas shem Yisrael hu mofia umiskala gamkin bekamo chilukei madregos bilti safek lefi erech nefesh ha'adam ba'olam hazeh." Now, here's what it says Rabbi Silber, the midah of Yaakov, which is the ability to tap into one's inner holiness, one's inner kedusha, manifests itself on a variety of different levels according to one's personal level in life. The truth is, we're going to see this is the theme. When we develop these different, what he calls milos, with these different levels, these different levels of spiritual accomplishment, they manifest differently for different people. So, for example, as much as we're defining the trait or the milah of Yisrael as the ability to tap into your inner holiness, that ability manifests itself in different people in different ways. We'll see this later on. We'll say, and this is an incredible point. You see, when you begin this os, you begin to think that Rabbi Tzaddik is speaking about the elite of the elite in Am Yisrael. Right? There are certain milos, there are certain qualities, there are certain levels that were acquired by certain individuals. Then they were ultimately passed down to that individual's family, and then ultimately again from the family to the tzaddikim, and Rabbi Tzaddik kind of stops there. So you assume that he's describing milos, he's describing levels that really are attributable to the righteous. And then Rabbi Tzaddik comes along and says, once it was absorbed by the righteous, it's absorbed by the generations. And once it's absorbed by the generations, it manifests itself in everyone, just in different ways. So for example, Rabbi Tzaddik says, even what he calls the pachos shebi Yisrael, kigon ame haaretz v'kal shebekalim, even an am haaretz, even someone who's just, ignorant, totally ignorant, still has this midah of Yisrael, still has this midah of internal personalistic holiness, which he has the ability to access. So this is quite beautiful. Rabbi Tzaddik says that for these milos, for these levels, for these attributes, for these character traits or behaviors, there's going to be a continuum. So, for example, let's take Yisrael, because that's the midah we're focusing on right now. So the midah, or the maila, as Rabbi Tzaddik calls it, of Yisrael, is, as Rabbi Tzaddik defined, the idea sheshoresh todaso shakol Yehudi b'kedusha, that my genesis, my root, my beginning, my essence is holiness. That there is an eternal holiness that a Jew possesses. That is, and if he's able to tap into that inner holiness, he's able to accomplish incredible things. The first person to teach us that again was who? Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov, and again, you could tell me, why not Avram? Why not Yitzchak? Because remember again, Yaakov Avinu was the first person to engage in struggle. Because remember, as we're going to see, the way that this Yisrael holiness really comes out is through struggle. Right? The way most strengths come out is through struggle. But the way the Yisrael strength comes out ultimately is through struggle. All Rabbi Tzaddik is pointing out is that once Yaakov acquired it and developed it, he passed it down to his mishpacha. From his mishpacha, it went to the tzaddikim, to the righteous. And from the righteous, it spread to everyone. So now, says Rabbi Tzaddik, every single person has the ability to tap in to this Maila of Yisrael. Now, obviously, does everyone tap into it in the same way? Of course not. Does everyone go ahead and actualize it in the same way? Of course not. But everyone has the ability to do so. So on the Yisrael continuum, on the extreme, we have Yaakov Avinu, and then again, across that continuum, you have everyone else plotted there. To the point that on the other side of the continuum, you may have a total Amaretz. You may have someone who's totally ignorant, the antithesis of a Yaakov Avinu, who spent years learning in the yeshiva of Shem and Aver. You might have someone who's the opposite of Yaakov Avinu, yet that person has the ability to discover his inner Yisrael as well. Let's go a little bit weiter, just to show you another example of this. Turn to page Kufnun, skip to the left-hand paragraph. Tzaddik has a whole piece over here about Gerim, which is also interesting, but again, not really material to our topic. Take a look at the next paragraph. Page Kuf Nun, left-hand paragraph from Mir Chasidus. Suppose say the next Maila that Rabbi Tzaddik describes over here is the Maila of being a tzaddik. Being a tzaddik. So first Maila was Yisrael, second Maila is tzaddik. Umaila Shem tzaddik. What does it mean to be a tzaddik? Rabbi say this is incredible. Dahainu shomer habris. That will say in Chasidus, what being shomer habris means is sexual purity. Shomer habris, that a person maintains the covenant, right? The holiness of the makom milah. That a person does not engage in immorality. It's interesting, by the way, that's what a tzaddik is. Fascinating, right? A tzaddik is not someone who learns Gans Shas or Kol HaTorah Kol Rishon Achronim. Why? Because we know that's easy. I mean, if you have, all you really need for that is time. Okay, so that's not easy to find. But I'm just saying learning is enjoyable. Learning is easy. I mean, you understand what I mean when I say easy. I don't mean it's easy for everyone. I just mean that the process of learning, if you have the right, avira, and you have the right teacher, and you have the right chaverim, becomes a very enjoyable process. Tzidkus is the ability to be a moral person. The ability to resist temptations of immorality. That's tzidkus. And I will say, who was the first person to acquire this maila, to acquire this level of tzaddik? Zocha ba Seif Hatzaddik. Right? I will say, remember again, it's Avram Avinu, Yitzchak Avinu, Yaakov Avinu, Yosef. Yosef is Yosef Hatzaddik. Yosef Hatzaddik. Now I will say, so why does Yosef acquire that? Now again, we know, why does Yosef acquire that? Eshes Potifar. So just want to point out, what does that mean? Avram wasn't a tzaddik, Yitzchak wasn't a tzaddik, right? Yaakov wasn't a tzaddik. So remember, like we just said before, these levels are reached through struggle. They're only reached through struggle. We saw this by the way, just in Daf Yomi not so long ago, right? What does Yosef struggle with? Day in and day out, he has to actively battle the desire. He has to actively battle the temptation of Eshes Potifar. Also, we spoke about this. Who amongst us could really stand up to such a temptation like that? You're a young man, all alone in a foreign land. No one else, right? No one else loves you. No one else cares about you. Here's a powerful, I'm sure, beautiful woman who expressed an interest. Expressed an interest is putting it mildly. But she expressed an interest in you. And every single day, she re-expresses that interest. And again, being with her not only satisfies carnal desires, but also goes ahead and potentially is your ticket into Egyptian nobility. Who could stand up to such a nisayon like that? So therefore says Rabbi Tzaddik, tzidkus, sexual purity, that's Yosef Hatzaddik. That's Yosef Hatzaddik. He goes on, v'zocha ba'la hanchila zar achrat. Now remember again, here's the incredible part. What Yosef does for himself benefits us. Because the way these milas work is the first person acquires it, but then ultimately, essentially what happens is that first person kind of programs it in our national DNA. So once Yosef acquires the level of tzidkus, once he acquires that level, by definition it becomes part of our national DNA, and now each of us has the ability to access that koach as well. It's incredible. As Ber Mamar Rabbi Silber, listen to this. She'ina Amalek, he calls over the Medrash Tanchuma. This is incredible. She'ina Amalek, nofel ella biyad zaro shel Yosef. We'll say there's only one shevet in particular that has the ability, that has the koach to overcome Amalek. Isn't this interesting? And what's the only nation that has the ability to overcome Amalek? The offspring of Yosef. Offspring of Yosef. He goes on, V'zeh mipnei sha'amalek hu shoresh ha'akshus neged ritzon Hashem yisbarach va'akshus shel zera Yosef hu kiratz Hashem yisbarach. We'll say, this is incredible. Do you want to hear something that's mamish mind-blowing? Mamish mind-blowing. Yosef and Amalek have the same exact koach. The same exact koach. They just use it in exactly opposite ways. See, what's Amalek? Amalek is akshos. Right, Hattie, what's an action? Stubbornness. Yeah. Stiff, right? Stiff neck. A stubbornness. What is Amalek? So Amalek is stubborn in their, they will not yield to the Ratzon Hashem. They will not yield to it, right? Amalek is all mikra. Amalek is all, nothing is from God, nothing is ordained, there is no plan, everything is happenstance. That's Amalek. Everything is mikra. They refuse to acknowledge the Ratzon Hashem. We'll say, what's Yosef? Yosef refuses to acknowledge the wants and carnal desires of man. It's the same akshanos. It's the same stubbornness. It's the same unyielding nature. They just use it in two different ways. Amalek will not yield to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yosef will not yield to his Yetzer Hara. Right? They won't yield. Therefore, the Medrash says, isn't this incredible, that Amalek could only fall into the hands ultimately of Yosef. It's only the individual, only the mishpacha, who has that midah of akshanos that could conquer Amalek, who is a paradigmatic example of evil akshanos. Well, so we'll have to stop over here for today. But I'll say, but you see, again, I just want to point out, just coming attractions, it's kedai. It's kedai to come back. Which is, I'll say, like, we're going to go through this maila after maila after maila. These are the mailas of Klal Yisrael. They began ultimately, again, as the mailas of individuals, then became the mailas of mishpachas, and then went on to become the milas of a nation. So really, really exceptionally incredible. And again, I will say, this one of tzidkos, of being shomer havris, sexual purity, is one which we'll spend a little bit of time on, because it is such an incredible struggle. And Seif Hatzaddik has so much to be able to teach us in this regard. Me'ez Hashem will continue next week. Shkach, I will say.